Today we will be talking about the Netflix series 13 Reasons Why, which is coming out with its second season this week. I wanted to give a listener's discretionary statement real quick and let you know that this series covers a lot of different topics that may be inappropriate for small ears. And so if you're listening with kids, I'd suggest holding off on this podcast and listening to it when you're able to be alone.
Welcome to Candid Conversations with Dr. Mayfield. This episode is sponsored by Mayfield Counseling Centers, helping you find clarity, hope, and purpose. Call us at 719-452-4803. Here's your host, Trevor Sherry.
13 Reasons Why is a new Netflix series. I guess it's not necessarily new. It's coming out with its second season on May 18th, which, as we're recording it, is just a few days away. And we wanted to get ahead of the curve on this and equip parents to understand what's going on and how we can interact with culture and our kids in a way that is going to support our kids and do the best we can as parents. So I wanted to lay the groundwork real quick with you, Dr. Mayfield, is what the show is about. My wife watched all of season 1, and I watched a couple of episodes, but I didn't buy into it very much. But essentially, it's the story of a girl named Hannah who struggles with mental health issues, and records these tapes as her suicide note. And it directs itself towards one individual each tape. And it goes through her experience in high school of sexual abuse, depression, being neglected, friends, a lot of things that are unfortunately very normal in high schools. But they do depict it in a very graphic way, from the sexual assault scenes to her suicide at the end of season 1. Throughout the series, Hannah has committed suicide by episode 1, and it's sort of a reflection on the past and in the present as these students are figuring it out. A lot of drama, a lot of different plot lines, and what we're seeing as the most likely plot line for season 2 is not a school shooting, which was rumored a year ago when it first came out, but instead a continuation of the story where the teens in this high school are grappling with the loss of Hannah and the repercussions of her tapes, which bring out some legal issues with school counselors and the sexual assaulters, and the students learning to be healthy after this, which seems to have a positive reflection on it. And the original author has been disinvited to the season 2 production, which in my opinion is probably not a bad idea, as the original author kind of pushed the limit as to what he would talk about to break the mental health stigma. And I want to be straightforward and say that this series came out at a really poor time for Colorado Springs, as we were in the midst of a huge suicide epidemic at the time, and there weren't many high school students who watched this who were unaffected by suicide in their lives.
Yes, it's interesting because I think, we've talked about this both in public and just in our practice, that the idea behind 13 Reasons Why was actually a very good concept. The book is a 288-page book, novel that this was adapted from, and I think the heart behind it was good. However, it needed a little bit more boundaries or engagement. I mean, I think if Netflix was to do this over again, it would have been really great to go, okay, we're going to do a pre-release for parents and for educators and for youth pastors and for individuals, and we're going to have a guide to go with it to sit down and talk with, but just to release it to the tween-teen population without any context, without any guidelines, it was horrific. And I've heard, I know we had one here in Colorado Springs, but I've heard throughout the United States that there were some copycat type suicides based off of this. And it's like, no, that's not what it needs to be. And I think a lot of parents, and I know you and I have talked about this quite a bit, a lot of parents were at a loss. No, I'm not going to let my kids watch this. Well, okay, great. But you probably should watch it just in case they are at school and somebody gives them an iPad and says, hey, over lunch, hey, have you ever seen 13 Reasons Why? And now they're in the closet watchers.
And I want to put it out there that we're not recommending you, like, we're not promoting this series. We just know that it is going to be a topic of conversation in high schools and in parent circles. One thing that you and I talked about earlier was the fact that you can literally go on YouTube and you can search Game of Thrones synopsis, and you can watch the past, like a dozen seasons of Game of Thrones in 20 minutes, get all the main plot points, understand who the characters are. There's a lot of really creative people on YouTube who have done this, where you can experience a media phenomena in a short amount of time and be able to speak effectively to it. I would suggest, if you're not willing to put in the several dozen hours that it would take to watch the second season and the first season if you haven't seen it, search on YouTube for a supercut or some sort of synopsis of the storyline. You can even go on Wikipedia. They have a breakdown of each episode and the main plot points that happen. Now, you're not going to get the full experience, but I mean, for me, I didn't really want the full experience, since in the counseling field, a lot of the stuff that they're covering in the show is day-to-day life for some of our clients, and it's really raw. And especially if your teenager has had a friend commit suicide, or friends that were affected by friends who committed suicide, this may not be the best option for them to re-experience some of that trauma. But we have to be realistic that a lot of our teenagers are just going to watch it anyways, whether we allow it or not.
Well, and that's where I want our parents that are listening, or anybody that's listening, to remember, okay, we tend to stop paying attention to the culture that we're in by the age of 20, 25, and we kind of get stuck in that. I'm thinking about it. I'm almost 37, and so thinking about kind of my lens at which I view the culture is very, very indicative of my early 20s. And so we have to be more intentional as we get older to be in tune with the pulse of our current culture. And so that's kind of what we're asking our parents to do is be active parents, in that, if you're not at least 1 or 2 steps ahead of your kids, be 1 step behind and not 10 steps behind.
Right.
By going, okay, what is going on? And I'm going to put this plug in here for a second for parents that are listening. Go back and listen to our, go forward. So go forward and listen to our interview with David Eaton at Access Media, which
I believe will come out at the beginning of June. So if you're listening to this on the Saturday that we're publishing it, it'll be a little while. But
well, and I want you can go to accessmedia.org or access.org, and you can sign up for what they call the culture translator. And I think it's an important email to get. I get it on a weekly basis, but it just keeps you up on some of the trends that our kids are going through. Like, I just got introduced to this new deodorant challenge that girls are doing right now, where they're spraying each other with aerosol cans of deodorant until it punctures their skin and makes them bleed. And it's but I had I had no idea. I didn't even know about the Tide pod challenge until
it teaches you about the stupid things.
It does, but it's right. But this is what we're talking about, is that if as parents, if we're not up on culture, even the stupidity side of culture, we're not going to be as effective parents as we need to be. And so I'm not saying, sit down and make your kids watch 13 Reasons Why season 1 and season 2. Actually, I'm advising not to, but know that if your kids are at school, public school, if you're at, even Christian school, if you're at a charter school, these are the things that are being talked about in the hallways. And so, at least be going, hey, son or daughter, I know that these things are being talked about. If you ever have any questions, please come sit down and talk with me. If you get shown something that and this is just good parenting. Yeah. This is not just because of 13 Reasons Why.
Right. Yeah, it's this concept of active parenting. I mean, more active than just cleaning up after your kids when they leave a mess after you cleaned the room 5 minutes ago, and more active than simply driving them to school, dropping them off, and picking them up. It's being involved in your kid's life. And Mark, you have a practice that I think you've mentioned on the show before, where you offer 3 free counseling sessions if it doesn't work. Do you want to share that?
Yeah, don't hold me to this. But no, it's interesting because I think we lose sight of how to best be a parent because we get so busy. There's things in our lives that we're working with and working on. But when I work with families, I ask them the question, how often do you spend time with your kid on their level doing what they want? And you can't, I mean, I'm sure maybe you can relate to this, but I get a lot of blank stares.
Mm-hmm.
I got a lot of people going, I don't remember. And I said, so you want the behavior to change? And they're like, yes. I said, well, your kid needs to be seen. Well, I see them all the time. I'm like, no. They need to be seen. They need to be seen for who they are, their quirks and their struggles, their fears, their hopes. And so the best way to do that is to spend time with them.
Yeah.
And so I challenge parents to go, okay, next 21 days, 3 weeks, 15 minutes a day at least, doing what your child likes on their level. And I said, I guarantee you the behavior will go away, or the behavior that you want to go away will go away, or you'll have more influence in their life.
Yeah.
And I said, if it doesn't happen, I said, then I'll give you 3 free counseling sessions. And I haven't given it any away.
It works.
It does.
And I want to make a plug for parents who are listening to this, which I'm expecting is going to be the majority. Watch out for a couple podcasts that are coming up. We've got one on redefining success for our kids with Christy Tamelo. That's going to be incredible. We've got the one with David Eaton from Access Ministry, or Access Media. Access Media. And we're talking about keeping up with the times. And then we're also doing one on resiliency. Those 3 will be really impactful for parents, to kind of give you some hands-on next steps to how do we do active parenting really, really well. And for you who have been doing that well, just some tips and pointers, some tuning ups.
Yeah. And I think one other series that we want to do this summer is going to be a parent's guide to social media.
Mm-hmm.
It's a talk that we do in the public, but it would be a 2 or 3 part series of just walking with you through this monstrosity that is the internet and social media, right, and how it entices our kids. And so that'll be another one that you can listen to as well.
Yeah. I'll speak to this a little bit when we speak with David Eaton, but there's this concept that children are learning a world that they've been born into, and it's the parents' opportunity to teach them to navigate that world. But now our teens have a totally new world, a second world of social media and the internet that they have to navigate. And really, there aren't many people in society today who have a good grasp of that second world. And so they're navigating 2 worlds that one they can get guidance on and the other there's not much on. And so it does put extra strain on parents to figure this out and get ahead of where their teens are, which honestly I don't think is very far.
No, I have another way to look at it. Christy Tamelo says this in some of her talks, which I really appreciate, is that our children are cultural natives and we are the cultural immigrants as parents. And I want you to think about that for a minute and all that means. And in conjunction to this topic about 13 Reasons Why is, the difference between native and immigrant. As a native, things come natural. You understand the colloquialisms and the puns and the language of the culture. Where an immigrant is like, what does that mean?
Right.
Like, why? You have to learn the language. You have to learn all these nuances and the sarcasm and whatever that comes into play. And so, if parents can take that perspective, then that's a natural desire to be a student of their child and of the culture around them.
And I know that there's probably some parents here who were expecting us to go episode through episode and explain what's going on in the conversation starters, but obviously it's not out yet, and Netflix hasn't released a lot of information. They're trying to build suspense and build interest. They do a really good job of that. So what is the next step for parents who are listening to this when we release it before May 18th, or even after, who want to care for their kids and make sure that they're protected from any secondary trauma or whatever may come out of season 2.
Well, here's where I'm going to be pretty emphatic about this. If you know that there's a potential that your child's going to watch this, whether it be in your own home because they have access to Netflix, which is something I completely disagree with on a carte blanche. You need to have those things protected from your kids to protect their hearts and their minds and their eyes. But if they're going to watch it, and you know they're going to watch it because of a friend at school, or they're old enough, whether it be mature or age, I would really encourage you to sit down and do it together. Like, honestly, it's going to be uncomfortable for you.
Right. Probably more uncomfortable for your kid.
With you sitting in the room, yes. Right. But to do it together and to take that moment to go, okay, pause, or episode's over. Hey, let's talk. And like, I've got questions about the culture, and you've got questions about mental health. I mean, and so you engage in this dialogue, and that is healthy parenting. Yeah. We can't shelter our kids from the world forever. We have to prepare them for what's coming. And so I'm not an advocate of no phones ever. I'm an advocate for phones in the right way with preparation. I'm not an advocate for you have to be 18 before you can get your driver's license. Like, no, like, lead them into it, help them become effective in the culture that they're in. And this is the same thing. How do we prepare them for what they're going to see on TV and what is on the internet and all these kinds of things that I think scare parents, but do it together.
And speaking of things that could scare parents, I can imagine a parent doing this, sitting with their kid and watching the series, and something like a sexual assault scene comes up, and the parent may not know that their kid has experienced that, and that the kid is triggered. In that moment, please reach out to us. Yeah. We want to help you. We want to help navigate any situation that comes up that kind of just tills the soil of the heart and causes the truth to come out.
And that's candid@mayfieldcounseling.com or contact@mayfieldcounseling.com.
Right. And you can also give us a call. You'll get Adam Smith, our inquiry coordinator, 719-452-4803, and you'll just press 0 as soon as you hear the introduction.
It's so important because I think a lot of times parents don't engage in their kids' culture in this way because they're afraid of what they might uncover, and they don't feel like they're prepared, or they're a bad parent. And I look at this as kids are put into our lives to be stewarded. There's a certain point after 10, 11 years old that there's not a lot of control anymore. We have to be good stewards of this child that's in our life. And sometimes it's beyond what we're capable of because of what the world has thrown at us. And that's not a shame or guilt statement. That's just a what is statement. And it's going to be hard. You're going to be sad, or you're going to be frustrated or anxious or struggling with making sense of that. And that's where I reach out. Whether it be if you're listening in a different state or overseas, find somebody, a pastor, a coach, a teacher, a caregiver, somebody that you can align with for support is so important.
Yeah. And do feel free to reach out with any questions that you have about this topic and other topics that we've covered on our podcast. We'd love to interact with you through social media and put it to good use going forward. So again, that email is candid@mayfieldcounseling.com, or you can reach out to us on our Facebook, or give us a call. The Facebook link will be at the end of this episode. Mark, do you have any final words, keeping this episode relatively short for parents who are just listening on Saturday morning or whatnot?
Sure. I think we've covered it all. I think it's really, your kid the best, whether or not you feel like you have a connection with them right now because they're, in that tumultuous time period of being 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. However, research shows that between 47 and 54% of teenagers ages 12 to 17 still value parent input. And so when you think that they're not listening, or you think that they don't care, or you think that they don't assume. They value that input. And so be engaged, see your kid for who they are, value what they bring to the table, and walk with them through this. And if anything, think back to when you were 13 or 14 years old and what life was like, and provide those things that maybe you didn't receive as a teenager.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining Candid Conversations. If you would like more information, go to mayfieldcounseling.com/candid conversations and check out our Facebook page, Candid Conversations with Dr. Mayfield.